For the sake of simplicity, we're going to focus exclusively on the New Testament, and thus words that are in Greek today, but everything I'm saying applies mutatis mutandis to the Old Testament and words that are originally in Hebrew. I thought today, I'm teaching a class on the Acts of the Apostles, so I thought today we would look at the story of Philip the deacon evangelizing the Ethiopian eunuch. We're in Acts chapter 8, verse 26. And I want to show you a number of things that we can glean from Verbum's Bible word study, as well as other things we can do in Verbum to get information about specific words and how words are used in their contexts. First, is this word common or infrequent, especially from this human author? And I want to call your attention to the second part of that question, this human author. When we're facing a text that especially is difficult to understand, or we're looking at a text where words could mean a couple of different things, we want to privilege known uses of that human author. So for example, in Acts, we want to privilege clear cases elsewhere in Acts or from Luke's Gospel, because we have good reason to believe that the traditional position is correct, whereby St. Luke wrote both the third Gospel and the Acts of the Apostles. Second, does the word here, notice I bold italicized the word here in this question, bear its ordinary meaning or a specialized one? We're going to see words that, depending on who's using them, they can bear different meanings in context, and we want to be aware of that. Also, with which subjects or objects does this verb occur, if we're looking at a verb? Or if we're looking at a noun, with what verbs does this noun pair? In other words, what words are typically used together? Along the same lines, does this word, or this phrase, evoke theologically significant themes from the other testaments? So we're looking at the New Testament. Is this echoing something that was well established in the Hebrew Bible? Or, if I'm reading the Old Testament, am I reading something that's going to be later appropriated by the early church in the New Testament? And then fifth, is there anything notable about the grammatical features of this word? Is there something special about it's in the plural here, or, oh, that's in the past tense or the future tense, or that's an imperative? Something unique about the grammar. So these are some questions we want to have in the back of our mind. So let's look at a few concrete examples here in Acts chapter 8, verse 26. We pick up with verse 26. Then the angel of the Lord spoke to Philip, and this is the deacon Philip whom we met back in Acts chapter 6. He was with Stephen and 5 other men who were made deacons in that chapter. Get up and head south on the road that goes down from Jerusalem to Gaza, the desert route. The first thing I'm noticing here is this road that goes down from Jerusalem to Gaza. If you don't know where Gaza is, we want to find out. And just to review, we can easily do this by going to Verbum. I just right-clicked on the word Gaza here, and again I can see its Greek word, which is simply Gaza. But I can also, if I click on place, Verbum will take me either to the fact book, or it will take me, even better, directly to the atlas. If I go to the fact book, it'll tell me a little bit about the history of Gaza. I can even see down here with the lookup, I could go to the Anchor Yale Bible Dictionary for its entry on Gaza, or some of my other dictionaries. That'll give me history and culture. I want to go to the atlas. Where is Gaza? I want to find it on a map so that I can picture where is this taking place. And what I'm going to find out is that Gaza is located in what once was Philistia. Back 1,000 years ago, before the time of Jesus, when King David was in Israel, Gaza is located right here on the Mediterranean coast. You can see that road that goes through it. This makes sense of the pericope. It makes perfect sense that this Ethiopian eunuch had been in Jerusalem, so he gets on the road and he's headed back to Africa. If I zoom out, I can see that this is part of the Via Maris, the way of the sea. We learned that in Isaiah. That leads people from Africa, here's the Nile River Delta, into Syro-Palestine, and will eventually allow them access to the northern part and eventually the eastern part of the Fertile Crescent. Gaza was one of the 5 cities that made up Philistia. So if I go to a different map, this of an episode from 1 Samuel, I can see Gath, Gaza, Ashkelon, Ekron. These are all cities of the Philistines. So this tells the story of when the Philistines stole the Ark of the Covenant back in 1 Samuel. So I'm already thinking about this. How interesting. The Holy Spirit is going to be active in a land that was once hostile to the Lord's people. But then I read on in verse 27. So he got up and set out. Now there was an Ethiopian eunuch, a court official of the Candace, that is, the queen of the Ethiopians, in charge of her entire treasury, who had come to Jerusalem to worship and was returning home. In verse 29, the Spirit said to Philip, "Go up and join with that chariot." First thing I notice is that the Spirit is speaking an articulable sentence. The Spirit here is active. Is this common in the Acts of the Apostles? I can right-click on Spirit, and I can do a Bible word study. Again, I want to make sure anytime I do a Bible word study, at least in the first instance, I want to make sure I've selected the lemma, which has this circular icon here. So we're looking up not how an English translator has translated various words, Spirit, but I specifically want to be looking up how often St. Luke or other New Testament authors used this Greek word pneuma. So I'm going to do a Bible word study, and it will come up. One thing I want to do this is a good habit to get into when you're doing a Bible word study, is you want to do a Bible word study over just the New Testament. Verbum's default is to look at any other book that's been preserved in Greek, so this will include the deuterocanonical books in the Catholic tradition. Here I'm only interested in how the word pneuma is used in the New Testament. And I get this helpful little graph here. So 19 times in Matthew, 23 times in Mark, 36 times in Luke, a little less in John, 24 times. Acts is talking about the Holy Spirit all the time, or at least something. It's not always going to be the Holy Spirit, but something that can be translated Spirit. And I think because this word's used so frequently, it'll be helpful to narrow my search a little bit. This is something we often want to do in Verbum. We want to narrow our searches. So I'm going to click New Testament, and I'm going to restrict my search just to Acts. So now I'm looking only at those 70 usages in the Acts of the Apostles. And as you can see here it's generally talking about Spirit. We're usually going to mean the Holy Spirit in Acts of the Apostles. So as I scroll down, and as I look through these usages related to the Holy Spirit, I'm looking for what verbs are used alongside that noun Spirit. And I can see all the way back in the Pentecost pericope, back in Acts 2:4, the Spirit enables the first disciples to proclaim things. We also see the Holy Spirit spoke through the prophets here in 4:25. The Spirit is conferred in 8:28. We have the present passage here in 8:29, but if we scroll a little further down, we're going to see the Spirit is going to speak in 10:19. This is the story of Peter and Cornelius. The Spirit is going to speak again in Acts chapter 11, and it's going to continue. If I hit more, I can scroll down, and we're going to see the Spirit comes upon people to whom Paul speaks. The Spirit of Jesus does not allow Paul and his companions to go to Bithynia as they desire. So what we're learning here is that the Spirit is active in Acts. The Holy Spirit performs a number of different actions, so this is not all that uncommon, that the Spirit is speaking a clear sentence to Philip. And indeed, if I scroll down further, I'm going to see that the Spirit of the Lord snatches Philip away. Does the inspired author intend something quite so violent, this violent snatching Philip away after he's baptized the Ethiopian eunuch? And to find that out, one thing I can do is to do a simple search. And so to do a simple search for how often this verb is used in the New Testament, all I need to do is right-click, and instead of doing a Bible word study, which would give me a lot of information, here I'm just going to copy reference search. And I'm going to go to my tools menu up here, hit search, and here I'm searching entire Bible in the Nestle Allen Greek New Testament 28th edition. So I always want to be searching in the Greek Bible. That's going to give me the best results, but the entire Greek New Testament. And then I can Control V in the search bar, so I'm looking for all the uses of this verb, harpazo, hit my go button, and I can see that this verb occurs 14 times. And as I skim through them, helpfully I've got them in both Greek and English, you can see this verb does have a violent sense, often not being used in a positive connotation. Here in Matthew, you can see 3 examples. It means steal, or steal away, or take by force. This is what Jesus is afraid of in the Gospel of John. After he multiplies the bread and the fish, he's afraid people are going to snatch him away and make him king, so he withdraws. This is what the wolf does to the sheep in the Good Shepherd discourse. This is generally a bad thing. Yet here it's used in a positive with a positive connotation. The Spirit of the Lord snatches Philip away for his own purpose, and later in Acts it's going to mean rescue. Notably, Luke's Gospel does not use this verb. One other notable example, a couple of notable examples actually, here in 2 Corinthians, St. Paul is caught up. So he's talking about mystical visions he receives, even as he's suffering. Perhaps the most famous use of this verb is in 1 Thessalonians 4:17. This is where some Christians get the idea of a rapture. From this verb, will be caught up, that the believers, those who are alive, who are left when the Lord returns again, will be caught up together to meet those who have risen from the dead, talking about the resurrection of the body, to meet the Lord in air. So we can see this verb has a few different senses. So to learn how this verb is used, one thing I'm going to want to do is look at a lexicon. And the easiest way to do that is to scroll down here when I've right-clicked on the verb, and it will list for me what lexicons or what resources I can look the word up in. And let's just talk about what these are. This first option, the BDAG, it's named after the 4 principal authors of this lexicon. This is the industry standard for New Testament studies. It's also very expensive. It'll cost you $200 to get in your Verbum license, so we don't have it in our institutional package. I've ponied up that $200 to get it in my Verbum package. But it will look at every use of this verb, not only in the New Testament, but also in other early Christian literature. Harpazo, and it will give me a list of definitions. Worth noting, in lexicons, and this is true of dictionaries in general, they generally begin, the first meaning given is the most literal meaning, and then it will move to more figurative meanings. Keep in mind, though, just because one meaning is more literal and the second more figurative doesn't mean that the literal meaning is more common. Sometimes a figurative meaning really takes over and eventually obscures over time the original literal meaning. But here you can see, to make off with someone's property by attacking or seizing. So this is the negative meaning, to steal, carry off, drag away. And you can see we have examples from the Septuagint of wild animals being stolen, a similar usage. This J stands for John. What's nice is this is all hyperlinked. And so we've got some other examples. Then here in the second meaning, we're talking about removing someone or something suddenly to gain control. And 2a refers to someone being removed, and that's our example from John chapter 6, where the crowd wants to come and snatch Jesus away to make him king. We also have in 2b an example where no resistance is being offered, and that's where the lexicographer assigns our present meaning here, to where there is no negative connotation. The same is true of Paul's visions in 2 Corinthians 12, or this passage referring to the end of time, the second coming. There is nothing negative present there. You can see there's a lot of information there. A couple other options to mention, going back to lexicons. Once again, if I right-click on this word, I scroll down, the TDNT, this is an historical lexicon. It's going to talk about the history of words, both in their Hebrew background, so where we have a word used in the New Testament that has an Old Testament heritage, it'll tell us about that. It'll also tell us how the word's been used in the longer Greco-Roman tradition before even the collision of Greek culture with Hebrew culture when Alexander the Great conquered the Holy Land in the late 4th century BC. So you can see we have an entry here on harpazo, this is the verb, and it talks all about that background. We have a little bit of information. I often like to use the hamburger menu, that's this thing, which will give me the table of contents. It'll allow me to overlook here. Harpazo, or here harpagmos, the noun, the related noun, is found in the famous Philippians canticle. So those are two different sources. A third one I want you to know about is this one, the DBL Greek. This is our basic kind of run-of-the-mill New Testament Greek lexicon that you have in your Verbum license. This will give you what you need to know about where this verb is used and at least what basic meaning it has in the New Testament. I should mention there's a couple of others. The Louw-Nida is another lexicon which organizes Greek words by their sense. So it, as opposed to being in alphabetical order, it's in the order of the sense that a word bears. So like if I go to it, I scroll up here, this is in the section dealing with attachment. So it talks about different semantic domains, it calls them. So to grasp or to hold, here are different words that bear that general meaning. So it's a lexicon organized under some different principles, some non-traditional but still helpful principles. The last lexicon that was listed here that I don't ordinarily use unless I can't get any information from anywhere else, this LSJ, the Liddell Scott Jones, this is a helpful lexicon when we're doing classical Greek. It's a lexicon, it's the industry standard for classical studies. The problem is it says relatively little that's specific to the New Testament. Keep in mind, when we're studying New Testament Greek words, we're looking at the specific usage of these words in an outpost quite a ways from Greece, centuries after the classical period, whereas most of the examples you're going to find in the LSJ come from 5th century Athens, from Greece in the classical period, long before the language had been exported to the time of Jesus. And if you think about it, 500 years is a long time. The language evolves quite a bit over 500 years. Just contrast how we use English now in the 21st century versus how it was used back in the 1500s. It says a lot.